Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about working with Tulle. I recently have had some big discoveries and I wanted to share them with you. So when you work with Tulle, you never work in one layer, you always work in multiple layers. And for me, I was like, how do I secure these layers so that I can work with 4+ layers and it's not moving everywhere? So the project that I'm trying to do is I want to do this shirt here. Um, and I want to do the sleeves in Tulle. I want to do the lace or the collar in Tulle. And then I want to add a yoke. And just real quick, super simple to add a yoke to any pattern piece. So what you do is you figure out how far down you want your yoke to go. You mark a line on your pattern piece, and then you can either cut that or just simply fold it out of the way. So you would fold it along this line. But you do have to remember to add seam allowance on this line because your seam allowance will no longer be built in. So after you draw around the piece, you would have to add like either an extra 1/2 inch or an inch to the top piece and the bottom piece. So essentially you are cutting this piece in half to create a yoke. You can also, you don't have to do 2 different fabrics. Sometimes just having a yoke line is just a style choice. And they can be the same piece of fabric. But on this one, I wanted this to be tulle and then the bottom half to be cotton. And so I've been putting off on this project for a while because I just didn't know how to do this, and information on the internet was not great. And so I started reading this book called Couture Sewing Techniques. And throughout the book, you just kind of get this sense that sewing starts with basting. And I had a stroke of genius and I said, I'll just take my layers of tulle and I will baste them together to form one solid piece of fabric. And so I'm going to show you how I basted it together. So this, you can probably see it here. It looks like a zigzag or like a lightning bolt. But this is called pad stitching. It's a style of basting that's used in tailoring. And so basically what you do, I'm taking a contrasting thread. To do any basting, you always start with a back stitch. So you'll pull up the layers of fabric, pull that through, leave a tail, and then you'll go through that same spot again and do a back stitch. That. Then you will just keep going down. So it's just straight stitches across. Put that over here. Like this. I'm using long threads so I can do more. Do a longer line. And so I would say do about between 1 inch and 1/2 inch pad stitching. Now, to get this fabric is very woodgy, it's very movable. So the best way to secure your fabric is you're just gonna have to pin the crap out of it. So there you go. And then to end, you would also do a back stitch. And then you'll leave a tail like that. So that's pad stitching. It's a good basting stitch. So basically, for the fabric itself, you just want to make sure it's really flat. You're just going to pin as much as you can around just to keep the fabric moving or from moving. And then as you're pulling the stitches here in the pad stitching, you do not want to pull it very tight. You're not trying to move anything out of position. You're just wanting to secure it so where it doesn't go anywhere. So that's the base fabric. And so now you can see it's all sewn together and it's not moving, has very little movement. And so basically what is going to end up happening is when I cut this out, this is still, the pad stitching is going to remain, and it's going to stay like one piece of fabric, and it's not going to move. So the other part of this book that I read that was very interesting to me was the use of thread marking. I typically don't do it because it's like, oh, it's just like one extra step, but it actually turned out really, really well. So this is the collar piece, as you can see. So I went around the paper pattern and I marked it. It did take time and it was very tedious, but now I can see where my pieces are. My plan is to just cut them out, and then when I sew them, because I'll sew inside this line, I'll just leave this, and I'll leave this, and then when I cut it down for the collar to bag it out, I'll naturally cut this away, so I don't need to worry about it. But I'll just kind of leave everything in until it's all finished, and then I can pull out all these pad stitching, basting stitches. But I just kind of wanted to show you, so because this whole thing is mobile, you really have got to pin it to death. So I'm not pinning into my table like I normally do. I'm actually pinning the paper pattern to the tool because last night I realized that like at some point I'm gonna have to turn this whole piece so I can keep thread marking. So I'm just gonna show you a little bit like what is thread marking. Well, it's just a really good way to you can do this on any fabric, but you will be able to see your sewing lines on both sides of your fabric, which can be very helpful, especially if you're working with something like tulle or you're working with black, that can be hard to mark on even with chalk, and it doesn't rub off, it doesn't go away. It's a really good way to see your lines that you're sewing. So because also this fabric is very mobile, I'm going to use a very, very short basting stitch, which is how we're going to thread mark this. I'm just going to start in a random spot here. And again, this is going to take a while. So just like all basting, you leave a tail and then you're going to back stitch this. And then basically you just do a rather large running stitch right on the edge of your paper pattern. And it does take a while. But I haven't tried it yet with sewing it, obviously. But I think this is going to be a game changer with working with these fabrics that are very, very hard to mark on, or even like hard to use, right? Because if things move a lot on you, things can shift out of shape really quickly. And so, and also with the thread marking with these smaller basting stitches, you're sewing the layers further together, right? So you're further creating one piece of fabric out of these multiple layers. And a trick that I have learned over the years, like how do you know if you're picking up all the layers of fabric? So like I said, this table is padded, and I actually have like an old sheet that I stapled onto it, but you can actually hear when you scrape. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's me picking up just the sheet. So then I pick it up and I know that I'm under all the layers. Now, if you're doing this on a table or a flat surface, you'll be able to hear your needle scratch the table. So that's, you should probably be aware of that, that you don't want to scratch your pretty furniture. But yeah, use the sound, use the feeling, to your advantage. Also too, if you are doing something like flatlining, Listening for the sound of underneath is also going to help ensure that you've picked up all the layers. So basically you just keep going all the way around, and then when you're done or you need to switch thread, you just do a simple back stitch. So that means doing the same stitch you just did again, making a full circle, and you'll tighten, but you're not, you want it taut, you do not want it tightened. And then you'll leave a tail like such, and then that's it, that's thread marking. And so eventually I'll go all the way around, and this is all one piece of fabric now.